Russian President Vladimir Putin received a gift of the Quran during his visit to Derbent, Dagestan. Putin received the Quran as a gift when he visited the Juma Mosque in Dagestan on Wednesday, June 28, 2023. He visited the region to observe the al-Adha celebrations in Dagestan. "We presented our President, Putin, with a Quran from the Holy City of Mecca," said Veli Fataliyev, director of the Derbent Museum Maintenance, to TASS. Putin himself expressed the greatness of the Quran and emphasized that anyone who damages or insults the Holy Book of Islam will be punished in Russia. "In our country, that is a crime that violates the Constitution and the Criminal Code," he wrote, according to Iran press. He also expressed his gratitude for the gift of the Quran. "The Quran is sacred to Islam, and it should also be something sacred to others. We will follow that rule," he said. Dagestan is a region of Russia where the majority of the population is Muslim. The Juma Mosque is the oldest mosque in Russia and one of the oldest in the world. According to written sources, the Arab military leader Maslama ibn Abd al-Malik began the construction of the Juma Mosque in 733 to 734. 3,000-year-old sycamore trees stand in the courtyard of the mosque. In 2012, these trees were recognized as a natural monument and are now protected by the state. Putin's visit to Dagestan is seen as an effort to repair his position after the rebellion by the Wagner forces. Putin's appearance is considered unusual, given his secretive nature. Additionally, Putin is known to frequently fear for his safety. Besides the tight security enforced by the former KGB official, Putin is also said to have body doubles to protect himself from assassination attempts. For the Muslim world, Russian President Vladimir Putin may be seen as one of the world's pro-Islam figures. There are several underlying reasons for this, which are reflected in his policies. Efforts to ban LGBT practices, condemning the burning of the Quran, and frequently embracing Islamic countries in his foreign policy. Recently, a photo of him hugging the Quran, a gift from Saudi Arabia, has circulated. This photo was even displayed on the streets of Lebanon and celebrated with great enthusiasm. Putin's relationship as an individual, or Russia as a country, with Islam is closely related to the position of the religion in Russia. Notably, Islam is quite significant in Russia, despite having minority status. According to data from the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, 2022, Islam is the second largest religion after Orthodox Christianity, with a percentage of 5% or 14 million people in Russia. The population is reportedly even larger according to Russia's Grand Mufti, Sheikh Rawalganeddin, who in 2018 estimated around 25 million Muslims. The position of Islam in Russia is undoubtedly linked to the dynamic history of Islam filling the historical space of Russia from the classical to the modern era. Like other regions around the world, the inhabitants of the Russian region initially followed animism and dynamism practices. The ancestors of the Russian people, or Proto-Russians, referred to as Russ, often worshipped the wind, sun, moon, and sky. When Islam emerged in Arabia in the 7th century, they were still practicing these beliefs. As these practices continued, the Russ people had a habit of expansive migration. According to Galina M. Yemelianova in Russia and Islam, 2002, this expansion was due to their region lacking mountains and rivers, making it scarce in natural resources and vulnerable to foreign attacks, thus more open. This prompted them to seek new places in the east and south. In short, the result of these years of activities was the expanding territory of the Russ into Eastern Europe. The Russ people populated many villages in Eastern Europe. However, Jeffrey Hosking notes in Russian History, 2012, that their goal of finding a region with a different geographic contour failed. In other words, the region remained the same, an open plain. As a result, their territory became open and consequently easily accessible to foreign nations, whether peacefully or through violence. At this point, the Russ people began to interact with Islamic nations, traders from Arabia and Persia. Gradually, the two sides engaged not only in economic transactions but also in Islamization. The Russ people eventually began to convert to Islam and abandon their worship practices. In the mid-9th century, the Russ in Eastern Europe were colonized by the Khazars. According to the Encyclopaedia Britannica, the Khazars were originally from Turkey and were part of the Turkish Empire. However, in the mid-7th century, they separated and expanded into other territories, eventually succeeding in controlling the Proto-Russian regions that would become modern Russia. Quoting Galina M. Yemelyanova in Russia and Islam, 2002, although the Khazar rulers were mostly pagans, they allowed Islam, as well as Christianity, to flourish. This was because these two religions had already spread among the local population. Therefore, it is not surprising that the Khazar capital, Itil, and other cities were dotted with mosques. In fact, under Khazar rule, an early form of religious tolerance emerged in Europe, which was in stark contrast to the religious intolerance in Western Europe. Many mosques stood alongside churches and pagan temples. Additionally, many soldiers were Muslim. The dynamic relationship between Islam and the Russ people continued over time. This continued even when the Vikings from Scandinavia arrived. During this period, Islam continued to grow, but an awareness of building a nation began to emerge. Referring again to Jeffrey Hosking's writings in Russian History, 2012, this awareness arose from local rulers who began to seize power to establish a state. However, only one of them succeeded, namely Vladimir the Great, who united them under the new Slavic state called Kievan Rus. Eventually, Kievan Rus would change its name to Russia, or modern Russia. When building the state, Vladimir, as a pagan worshipper, had to choose a state religion that could be adopted by both him and the people. At that time, there were many options, including Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. However, Islam had a significant chance because the majority of the population at that time was Muslim. Vladimir almost made Islam the official state religion. Nevertheless, Vladimir chose a different path. As noted by the RTBH site quoting the ancient chronicle, The Tale of Bygone Years, to decide this, Vladimir invited representatives of all religions. The purpose was to get their views on their respective religious teachings. Islam was represented by the Muslims from Volga, Bulgaria. They explained that the main characteristics of Islam included the prohibition of alcohol consumption, no extramarital sex, abstaining from pork, and male circumcision. Practically, Vladimir, who often engaged in these activities, was immediately displeased. According to the chronicle, Vladimir uttered the legendary statement, "Drinking is the joy of all Rus. We cannot live without that pleasure." As a result, Vladimir chose Orthodox Christianity as the official state religion. However, during Vladimir's Christian reign, Islam was not sidelined. Vladimir still valued Muslims because they were the backbone of trade. In the end, Islam continued to grow over time, becoming significant and surviving until today. Muslims then spread due to the openness of Putin's ancestors towards Islam. They did not just remain in modern Russia but also in the independent former Soviet countries. These include Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, all of which are now majority Muslim countries in Central Asia.